friends, it's Mari. I'm back today with another process video for honeybee stamps. Today I'm going to be making this A2 size card with a bunch of the beautiful products from the autumn afternoon release. I'm going to start off here today with some Ranger watercolor cardstock, and I'm going to be using this beautiful Darling Dahlias stamp and die set. This is just such a gorgeous set. I think I'm going to take it out of the package here and just show you on some of the packaging what these images are like and all of the different sentiments that are part of this set. It is just such a beautiful stamp set. I really love it. And there's a coordinating die set that cuts out all of the different blooms and the foliage as well as the sentiments. So it's just a really beautiful set for a variety of different occasions that you might be making it or creating a card for. Just going to show you again the honey cuts that are coordinating with that stamp set. And I'm working on my waffle flower silicone media mat here today. I'm going to do some ink blending with some aged mahogany distress oxide ink onto this cardstock, and I'm going to be using the unbelievably awesome Honeybee Stamps palm blending brush. This is a fantastic tool. Now there I'm just showing you my Ranger cardstock. I am using a piece of the 8.5 by 11 cardstock, and the Distress Oxide ink just blends beautifully onto this paper. I really love using my waffle flower mat underneath as well because it just, the paper sticks to it nicely and doesn't move around while you're working away. And here you can just see that I'm holding it down on the one end, and then it's just nicely staying put where I'm blending it there. And I am going to blend quite a bit of this ink on to get a really nice solid inked up section. Now I am going to teach you something today, if you didn't already know it, and it's something that I've known for a really long time, but anyways, do as I say, not as I do. So I kept this in the video just to show you that this is a big mistake that can really impact what you're doing. Now my thought today was I would do some heat embossing on this beautifully distressed background with some gold embossing powder. So you can see there I just inked up my stamp with some embossing ink. I stamped that out onto my cardstock, and now I'm applying my embossing powder. I thought I had this nice and dry. I thought I had waited long enough to emboss over this, but look how the embossing powder sticks to that Distress Oxide ink. Well, now that's ruined, right? Or so I thought. So no, I'm going to persevere. I decided, no, I'm going to use that anyways. I took a brush and I brushed all of that ink or that embossing powder off as well as I could. And now I'm just melting whatever's left on there, and I'm going to use this paper anyways. Not for the purpose that I had originally thought I would, but you're going to see how it ends up working out, and I really love how it turned out in the end anyways. Now I am just heating this with my Ranger media tool. This is not an embossing tool, but my embossing tool died earlier this week, and why I decided to emboss before my new one arrives, I'm not really sure, but anyhow, I tried it. It did take a little bit longer, and it did warp my paper a little bit. So that tool is not really meant for embossing, but I just made do with what I had. Now you can see how that embossing powder just melted beautifully on that aged mahogany, and I'm gonna just go ahead and work with this, and I'm going to take you through the entire process of how I just kind of made lemonade out of the lemons today. Anyway, now I decided I wanted to use my gold Encore ink pad here and stamp those dahlias out onto some vellum. Now, another word of caution, this ink does take a while to dry, and make sure that you let it dry, because if you don't, it will smudge. And I actually did that like a good girl here today. I didn't try to rush this process. And the funny thing about that Distress Oxide ink today is that I actually did use my heat tool to dry it. And when I touched it, I thought it was dry. I should have tested a little corner of it, but I didn't. And anyways, this is the result. So I am going to use this paper as a layer behind that vellum and behind some gold glitter cardstock today to build some dimensional flowers for my card. Now I'm going to go ahead and take the companion coordinating dies and cut those panels out. Now you can just see how pretty they are. And I'm going to go ahead and use some adhesive to, some foam adhesive to glue these different layers together and create, like I said, just some really pretty dimensional embellishments. Now I'm just going to go ahead and take a circle punch And I'm going to use that to adhere the foam adhesive onto the back of that vellum so that you can't see that foam adhesive through that vellum. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that little glitter cardstock circle that I punched with my circle punch. I'm going to glue that onto the back of my vellum. And then I'm going to go ahead and stick the foam adhesive to the back of that glitter cardstock that's in this circle. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to adhere that to the glitter cardstock, and then I'm going to adhere the glitter cardstock onto one of those aged mahogany distress ink panels that I've also die cut out. And that's going to make a 3-layered, very dimensional, beautiful card embellishment for my card front today. And I really love how this turned out in the end, but it was definitely a process to get there. And looking back on it now, I just am reminded once again, as a card maker or a maker in general, that oftentimes when you're working on something, don't toss it out. Just keep going, persevere. You can make something great out of those happy accidents, right? So now I'm taking a panel of pattern paper from the beautiful Autumn Afternoon collection of pattern paper. This is that beautiful 6x6 pad that I'm showing you here. And I've cut that out with a stitched rectangle die, and I'm going to adhere that to a cardstock base. That cardstock base is actually Gina K faded brick. And that's just a really beautiful fall color. And I think it looks so pretty with this really light blue patterned paper that has that little bit of design on it that's just subtle. And it makes just a really, really nice background for the rest of your card. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere that down with some repositionable tape runner here. Just going to wiggle it around here a little bit until I get it perfectly centered, or as perfectly as possible with the naked eye. And I'm just going to get that centered on there and go ahead and start putting the rest of the elements onto my project. Now, I did go ahead and cut some of the quilt triangle thin frames. I'm going to go ahead and show you that die here. This is a wonderful die. If you don't have this honey cut yet, it is fantastic. I did cut that from some gold glitter cardstock. I just did one pass of that die, and I'm using 4 of those triangles in different sizes just to create the little corner embellishment areas for my project. So I'm going to take the sizes so that there's a little bit of space, a gap, so that they're not butted up right against each other in that way. And I just think that looks interesting and kind of creates just that little bit of base for adding some other elements. So you can see my dimensional flower there is going to go in the lower right hand corner where those little triangles are that I've created with that thin frame die. And here you can see I'm going to use the beautiful Blessed Buzzword honey cuts. I'm going to use 2 of these dies from this set to layer for my sentiment today. And I've cut it from that faded brick and the gold glitter cardstock as well. I'm just showing you here, here's the Blessed stamp set as well. I'm going to use one of the sentiments from that stamp set also to go along with the die cut Blessed as well. Just using my craft pick here to take out some of the little inside parts of that die cut piece there. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue that gold piece to the faded brick piece once I'm ready to go ahead and get this adhered to my project. Now I just have everything kind of laid out here so that you can see the basic design, how I want to put this card together. I like to do that. I like to sometimes even take a photograph when I'm working on my cards just to remind myself when I'm going to adhere things down, how it's going to look. I'm just showing you, I'm going to use one of these smaller sentiments for my card. The smaller sentiment that I'm going to be stamping out is the By You, so that my sentiment in its totality is going to say Blessed by You. I'm going to stamp that out here with some, I think this is Fallen Leaves VersaFine Clear ink. Just stamps out really nice and crisply. And I'm also going to take my Honeybee precision glue tip tube here and go ahead and glue down these glitter triangles into place. And I'm not going to show you gluing them all down, but I just used my tweezers and I went ahead and I just really like using that liquid adhesive because it does allow you to just kind of have a little bit of time to wiggle things around and get them nicely adhered down. And I did just take a minute to make sure that I have that straight so that the next one goes in will be straight as well. And I'm just going to go ahead and get that glued down, and I will do the same thing for the triangles in the top corner as well. Get everything nicely adhered and ready to put that Darling Dahlia dimensional flower down in that corner as well. And there you can see I'm just positioning that back on there again to make sure that I know exactly where I want everything to go. Here you can see I'm just using my tweezers again to go ahead and apply some of that liquid adhesive to the back of that finer cut. And I just love that this is such a really delicate layer over top of that more solid base. I think it just looks so pretty, and the font is gorgeous. I love it, and I just love these buzzwords. I think they are just a beautiful addition to a project for the sentiment. So pretty. So you're going to just see here I've got those triangles in the upper left corner all stuck down, and now I'm ready to adhere my buzzword. And I do want this to pop up a little bit because, as the amazing Laura Basson says, dimension is life, and I'm all about that too. I think it looks so good. So I'm going to add some dimensional adhesive here and add this down to my card at the top. And then I will go ahead and add that by you sentiment as well, which I've just trimmed out with my guillotine trimmer. And I will add that with a little bit of 3L dimensional foam adhesive as well. I'm just kind of trying to sort out exactly where I want to put that. It could have gone in that first little spot or this one. It doesn't really matter. It looks good in both areas. And here I'm just going to take some of my liquid adhesive and go ahead and get this dimensional flower stuck down as well. Get that positioned. And I wanted to add a few other little details to my card at this point. So I decided to go ahead and take the leaves from the Darling Dahlia stamp set and stamp those out on that faded brick cardstock. Again, I'm going to stamp them out again with my Encore gold ink and stamp that down. Now I am going to do some heat embossing here with my gold embossing powder. I just was really, pushing the limits with the embossing here today, but I decided to try it. It actually, the heat embossing, the embossing powder actually melted okay with my Ranger Media heat tool anyways, disregarding the fact that it's not really meant for embossing, but it's all that I had in my space today to do embossing with. So it actually works out well. It did melt that, and now I'm ready to go ahead and die cut these out with the coordinating dies. So I'm just going to tape those on with some painter's tape here. If you're using painter's tape, I highly recommend that you stick it to your arm, your skin, or something that's going to take some of the stick off of it a little bit so that it doesn't stick to your paper. And this yellow painter's tape that I'm using here has been used and used and used and reused again. I just leave it on the side of my table and I just keep using it because you don't really need that much stick to get those dies to stick to your paper. Now, I just wanted to position those leaves kind of like opposite each other a little bit to balance off everything on my card. And you're just going to see me here fiddling around with them and getting them into place. And then I will go ahead and stick those down. Now, I am going to also take my hole punch and I'm going to hole punch some tiny little dots out of that same cardstock, that faded brick cardstock. And I'm going to just add 3 little dots of glue to the center of my flower with my glue tube again. I'm going to use my tweezers to pick up those little dots and add them to the center of my dahlia, just to add a little bit of detail. I just thought it needed a little bit of something else to the center of it, and to bring that that brick color again to the center area of my flower. I'm going to go ahead and add that in, and then I'm also going to add a few gold stickles to the center of my card as well, and that's going to finish my card off today. I had so much fun creating this. As always, it was a little bit of a trial, but I relied on my resilience today to just go ahead and stick with the process. And I really wanted to keep everything in today and share with you, you know what, sometimes when things don't go right the first time, you just have to kind of think outside the box and think about how you can use your products and switch things up a little bit and go down maybe a little bit of a different path than you originally planned. And I really love how this card turned out in the end. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please make sure you check the description box below for links to all of the products that I used today. And I absolutely love the autumn afternoon products, and the entire collection is just absolutely gorgeous. And there's so many fun things, so many fun elements to this collection that you can check out in the Honeybee shop. Make sure you check Honeybee out in all of the social media platforms, including Facebook and the blog. And I'll see you next time. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.